Society has convinced you that vulnerability is strength. But in the real world, vulnerability without boundaries is weakness that others will exploit. Your transparency about your problems is creating opportunities for others while destroying opportunities for yourself. The person who shares every struggle becomes known for their struggles, while the person who shares only their solutions becomes known for their success. There's a reason why millionaires don't complain about money problems and why leaders don't broadcast their doubts. They understand that perception shapes reality and reality shapes results. Your problems are not meant to be shared with the world. They are meant to be solved by you in private, where they can transform you instead of defining you. Your mouth can be your greatest enemy or your most powerful weapon. Right now, as you sit there. Someone somewhere is destroying their future with their own words. They're sharing their problems, broadcasting their struggles, and advertising their weaknesses to anyone who will listen. But you don't have to be that person. Today, I'm going to show you why keeping your problems to yourself isn't just smart, it's absolutely essential for your success. There's a man I know who built a multi-million-dollar empire. When I first met him, he was struggling to pay his rent. His business was failing. His marriage was falling apart. And creditors were calling him every day. But here's what made him different from everyone else in his situation. He never told anyone about his problems. While his neighbors complained about their bills, while his friends gossiped about their troubles, this man went to work in silence. Every morning, he would put on his best suit, even though he couldn't afford to dry clean it. He would smile at his employees, even though he didn't know how he was going to pay them. He would speak with confidence to his clients, even though inside he was terrified of losing everything. And you know what happened? People began to see him as successful long before he actually became successful. They wanted to do business with him because he carried himself like a winner, not like someone drowning in problems. The interesting thing about this man's story is that his transformation didn't happen overnight. It took 3 years of silent struggle before his business turned around. 3 years of keeping his mouth shut while his world was falling apart. But during those 3 years, something powerful was happening. He was building a reputation for strength. He was creating an image of reliability. And most importantly, he was training his mind to focus on solutions instead of problems. Now, I want you to understand something fundamental about human nature. When you tell people your problems, you're not getting help. You're getting sympathy. And sympathy is the most dangerous drug in the world because it feels good in the moment, but destroys your power in the long run. Every time you share your struggles, you're programming your mind to see yourself as a victim. You're reinforcing the very identity that keeps you stuck. Think about the people in your life right now. When someone mentions their name, what's the first thing that comes to your mind if they've been sharing their problems with you? I guarantee you think about their struggles before you think about their strengths. That's not their fault. That's human psychology. We remember drama more than we remember triumph. We remember complaints more than we remember achievements. But here's the secret that successful people understand. Silence is not just golden, it's strategic. When you keep your problems to yourself, you force your mind to work differently. Instead of seeking sympathy, you start seeking solutions. Instead of looking for people to agree with your complaints, you start looking for ways to change your circumstances. Your brain literally rewires itself when you stop feeding it the drug of external validation for your problem. I've watched people destroy their careers by sharing too much. I've seen entrepreneurs lose investors because they couldn't stop talking about their challenges. I've witnessed marriages fail because one partner turned every conversation into a therapy session about their problems. The harsh truth is this: most people don't want to hear your problems. And the few who do want to hear them are usually not the ones who can help you solve them. The businessman I told you about understood this principle instinctively. While his competitors were complaining about the economy, he was studying market trends. While others were gossiping about their difficulties, he was building relationships with potential clients. While everyone else was focused on their problems, he was positioning himself as the solution to other people's problems. This doesn't mean you should never seek help or advice. It means you should be strategic about when, how, and with whom you share your challenges. There's a massive difference between seeking counsel from a mentor and complaining to anyone who will listen. There's a world of difference between asking for specific help with a specific problem and broadcasting your general dissatisfaction with life the moment you start keeping your problems to yourself. You'll notice something remarkable happening. People will start seeing you differently. They'll begin to view you as someone who has it together, someone who's in control, someone who's worth their time and attention. You'll find that opportunities start coming your way because people want to associate with strength, not weakness. Your problems are not your identity. Your struggles are not your story. Your challenges are not your character. They're simply temporary obstacles that require private solutions, not public announcements. When you understand this distinction, you gain access to a power that most people never experience, the power of silent strength. The most successful people in the world have learned to suffer in silence and celebrate in public. They understand that sharing your problems makes you vulnerable, but solving your problems makes you valuable. They know that complaints repel opportunities, but solutions attract them. They've mastered the art of keeping their struggles private while building their success in full view of the world. This is not about being fake or pretending everything is perfect. This is about understanding that your mouth is either building your future or destroying it with every word you speak. Choose wisely. Keep your problems to yourself and watch how quickly your life begins to change. Now that you understand the strategic power of silence, let me show you something even more profound. Every problem you share is like opening a valve and letting your life force drain away. You see? Your energy is not unlimited. You wake up each morning with a certain amount of mental, emotional, and spiritual energy. And how you use that energy determines the quality of your entire day. When you tell people your problems, you're not just sharing information, you're transferring energy. You're taking the precious fuel that should be powering your solutions and pouring it into conversations that lead nowhere. Think about this carefully. Have you ever noticed how exhausted you feel after complaining for an hour? Have you ever realized how drained you become after a long conversation about everything that's wrong in your life? There was a woman I counseled several years ago who came to me completely defeated. She was a talented professional, intelligent and capable, but her life was falling apart. Her marriage was struggling, her finances were a mess, and her health was declining. But the strangest part was that everyone in her circle knew every detail of her problems. She had turned herself into a walking newsletter of personal disasters. Every phone call was an update on her latest crisis. Every lunch meeting became a therapy session. Every conversation with her colleagues turned into a complaint festival. She thought she was getting support, but what she was actually doing was reinforcing her victim identity every single day. She was programming her subconscious mind to see problems instead of possibilities. I gave her a simple challenge. For 30 days, she was not allowed to mention any of her problems to anyone except her journal. Not to her friends, not to her family, not to her co-workers. For 30 days, she had to redirect every conversation away from her struggles and focus on other topics. Do you know what happened? By the end of the first week, she noticed she had more energy. By the end of the second week, she started seeing solutions she had never noticed before. By the end of the month, she had resolved 3 of her major problems and was well on her way to fixing the others. The breakthrough didn't come from getting advice from others. It came from stopping the energy drain that was keeping her stuck. You see when you constantly talk about your problems. You're doing something dangerous to your mind. You're creating neural pathways that make problem-centered thinking your default mode. Your brain becomes addicted to finding what's wrong instead of what's possible. You train yourself to be a professional victim instead of a professional problem solver. But when you stop talking about your problems, something magical happens. All that energy you were wasting on complaints gets redirected towards solutions. Your mind starts working for you instead of against you. You begin to see opportunities that were always there, but were invisible to your problem-fitful vision. Think about the most successful people you know personally. I bet they're not the ones who are always sharing their struggles. The people who are winning in life have learned to convert their problem energy into solution energy. They take the same mental and emotional fuel that others use for complaining and channel it into creative thinking, strategic planning, and productive action. This is why your problems should be your private property. They are not entertainment for others, they are not conversation starters, and they're definitely not relationship builders. Your problems are raw material for your growth, and raw material should be processed privately before you display the finished product. Every minute you spend talking about what's wrong is a minute you're not spending on making it right. Every conversation about your struggles is a conversation you could have used to build a valuable relationship or learn something new. Every complaint session is an opportunity cost that's stealing from your future. So here's what I want you to understand about energy management. Your focus determines your feelings, and your feelings determine your actions. When you focus on problems by talking about them constantly, you feel overwhelmed and powerless. When you feel overwhelmed and powerless, you take weak actions or no actions at all. But when you redirect that same energy towards solutions, you feel empowered and capable, which leads to strong, decisive actions. The woman I told you about didn't just stop complaining. She started channeling her energy differently. Instead of spending her lunch breaks discussing her marital problems, she used that time to read books on communication. Instead of calling her friends to vent about her finances, she researched investment strategies. Instead of complaining about her health, she researched nutrition and started meal planning. Same woman, same problems, but completely different energy allocation. The problems didn't disappear overnight, but her capacity to solve them multiplied dramatically. She went from being a victim of her circumstances to being the architect of her solutions. Your energy is your most valuable resource. Protect it like your life depends on it, because it does. Your reputation is the most valuable currency you will ever possess. And most people are spending it recklessly without even realizing it. Every time you share your problems, you're making a withdrawal from your reputation account. Every complaint you voice is a transaction that diminishes how others perceive your capability, your reliability, and your strength. I want you to think about reputation like a bank account. Every interaction you have with people either makes a deposit or a withdrawal. When you consistently handle challenges with grace and dignity, you're making deposits. When you solve problems quietly and efficiently, you're building wealth in this account. But when you constantly share your struggles and broadcast your difficulties, you're making withdrawals that compound over time. There's a leader I've worked with who understood this principle better than anyone I've ever met. He built a company that employed over 500 people. But during the early years, he faced bankruptcy 3 times. His industry was volatile. The economy was unstable, and competitors were trying to destroy his business. Yet, throughout all of these challenges, his employees, clients, and even his competitors viewed him as unshakable. How did he maintain this image while his world was crumbling around him? He never let his private struggles become public knowledge. While other business owners in his industry were constantly complaining about market conditions, government regulations, and unfair competition, this man was busy finding solutions. While others were broadcasting their problems at industry meetings, he was quietly building strategic partnerships. His employees trusted him because they never heard him panic. His clients remained loyal because they never doubted his stability. His investors continued supporting him because they saw a leader who could handle pressure. Meanwhile, his competitors, who constantly complained about their challenges, began to look weak and unreliable to the same people who could have helped them succeed. The fascinating thing about this leader's approach was that he wasn't pretending his problems didn't exist. He was simply choosing to process them privately rather than publicly. He had a small circle of trusted advisors who knew about his challenges, But he was strategic about when and how he shared information, even with them. He understood that his reputation was an asset that needed to be protected. You squander when you overshare your problems. You create doubt in people's minds about your ability to handle responsibility. They start questioning whether you're the right person for that promotion, that partnership, or that opportunity. They begin to see you as someone who needs help rather than someone who can provide help. This shift in perception happens gradually, but once it occurs, it's extremely difficult to reverse. Your reputation precedes you into every room you enter. It influences whether people want to do business with you, whether they recommend you for opportunities, and whether they trust you with important responsibilities. When you consistently share your problems, you're programming people to associate your name with struggle rather than strength. But here's a powerful truth about maintaining your reputation through discretion. When you handle problems quietly, people assume you don't have many problems. When you solve challenges without drama, people believe you're naturally gifted at problem solving. When you maintain composure during difficult times, people see you as leadership material. This doesn't mean you should be dishonest about your struggles when directly asked by someone who can genuinely help. It means you should be intentional about who gets access to your vulnerable moments and strategic about how you present yourself to the world. There's a profound difference between transparency and overfamiliarity. The leader I mentioned earlier eventually became one of the most respected figures in his industry. When other business owners faced challenges, they sought his advice. When investors were looking for stable opportunities, they approached his company first. His reputation for handling pressure with grace became his greatest business asset, worth more than any marketing campaign or sales strategy. Remember this: people don't just buy your products or services, they buy your reputation. They don't just hire your skills, they hire your character. They don't just invest in your business, they invest in their perception of your ability to succeed despite obstacles. Guard your reputation like the treasure it is. The moment you stop talking about your problems, your mind undergoes a revolutionary transformation. You shift from being problem-thinkered to becoming solution-oriented. And this shift changes everything about how you experience life. Most people spend their entire lives stuck in problem mode, constantly analyzing what's wrong, discussing what's broken, and reinforcing what's not working. But successful people have learned to live in solution mode when you keep your problems private. You're forced to become your own problem solver. There's no audience to perform for, no sympathy to collect, no validation to seek. There's just you and the challenge, which means you must focus all your mental energy on finding a way through or over the obstacle in front of you. I've observed something remarkable about people who solve problems quietly. They develop a kind of mental muscle that others never build. While problem-flanted people become experts at describing their difficulties, solution-flanted people become experts at resolving them. While complainers get better at complaining, solvers get better at solving. Think about the mathematics of this approach. If you spend 1 hour talking about a problem, that's 1 hour you didn't spend solving it. If you have 10 conversations about your struggle, that's 10 opportunities you missed to take action. If you invest a week discussing your challenges with various people, that's a week of solution-seeking time you'll never get back. But when you commit to handling problems privately, something powerful happens. You become selective about which problems deserve your attention and which ones you can simply ignore. You start asking better questions. Instead of why is this happening to me, you start asking, what can I do about this? Instead of who can I tell about this, you start asking, how can I fix this? The most successful people I know have mastered the art of selective sharing. They don't broadcast their struggles, but they're strategic about seeking counsel when they need it. They understand the difference between complaining and consulting. When they do share their challenges, it's with specific people who have the expertise, experience, or resources to help them find solutions. This selective approach requires wisdom and discernment. You need to identify your inner circle carefully. These should be people who have successfully navigated similar challenges, who can offer practical advice rather than just emotional support, and who will hold you accountable for taking action rather than just listening to your problems. Your inner circle should be small and trustworthy. These are the people who earn the right to know about your struggles because they've proven they can help you solve them. They're not there to sympathize with your problems. They're there to help you eliminate them. They don't just listen, they contribute. They don't just agree with your concerns, they challenge your thinking and push you towards solutions. But even with your inner circle, the goal should always be moving from problem to solution as quickly as possible. The conversation shouldn't be about dwelling on what's wrong. It should be about strategizing what's next. You're not looking for people to agree that your situation is difficult. You're looking for people who can help you make it easier. This solution-focused approach transforms not just how you handle problems, but how you prevent them. When you're constantly thinking about solutions, you develop anticipatory thinking. You start seeing potential problems before they become actual problems. You begin making decisions today that prevent difficulties tomorrow. The compound effect of this approach is extraordinary. Over time, you develop a reputation as someone who doesn't just identify problems, you solve them. People start bringing their challenges to you instead of you bringing your challenges to everyone else. You become known as a solution provider rather than a problem broadcaster. And this shift in identity opens doors that remain closed to chronic complainers. There's a story I need to share with you that will change how you think about struggle forever. It's about a young woman named Maria who came from nothing and built something extraordinary, but not in the way you might expect. Maria grew up in a neighborhood where complaining was considered normal conversation. Every family gathering was a competition to see who had the worst problems. Every phone call between neighbors was an exchange of grievances. Every workplace lunch break was a therapy session about life's unfairness. This was the culture she inherited. And for the first 25 years of her life, she participated fully in this ritual of shared misery. But Maria had a dream that seemed impossible given her circumstances. She wanted to become a pediatric surgeon. She was working 2 minimum wage jobs to support her younger siblings after her mother became ill. She had no money for medical school, no connections in the medical field, and no obvious path to her goal. Every logical voice around her said it was impossible. The old Maria would have spent hours every day talking about how unfair her situation was, how the system was stacked against people like her, how she didn't have the advantages that other people had. She would have found sympathetic ears everywhere because her complaints would have been completely justified. Her problems were real. Her obstacles were genuine. And her challenges were overwhelming. But something happened that changed everything. Maria's younger brother, who was only 16 at the time, said something that cut through all her excuses. He looked at her during one of her complaint sessions and said, "Sister, every minute you spend telling us why you can't become a doctor is a minute you're not spending becoming one." Those words hit her like lightning. She realized that she had been using her very real problems as an excuse to avoid the very real work that her dream required. She had been so busy broadcasting her struggles that she hadn't been addressing them. She had been performing her victimhood instead of overcoming it. From that moment, Maria made a decision that seemed radical to everyone around her. She stopped talking about her problems entirely. When family members wanted to discuss their shared struggles, she politely changed the subject. When co-workers invited her to join their complaint sessions, she declined and used that time to study. When friends called to vent about their problems, she listened briefly and then directed the conversation towards solutions. The change in her life was immediate, but not in the way you might expect. At first, things got harder, not easier. When you stopped complaining, you lose a lot of social connections because many relationships are built around shared grievances. When you stop participating in victim conversations, some people think you become arrogant or that you're pretending to be better than them. Maria lost several friendships during this transition. Family members accused her of becoming cold and distant. Co-workers stopped inviting her to lunch. But something extraordinary was happening in the space that opened up when she stopped filling her time with problem-fingered conversations. She began to see opportunities that had always been there, but were invisible to her complaints-faced vision. She discovered scholarship programs she had never noticed. She found mentorship opportunities through community organizations. She identified ways to maximize her study time by changing her daily routines. Most importantly, she started believing in possibilities instead of being paralyzed by problems. The transformation took 4 years of complete silence about her struggles. 4 years of declining invitations to complain. 4 years of redirecting problem-fancied conversations toward solution-fancied action. 4 years of private discipline while others indulged in public self-pity. During those 4 years, Maria worked her 2 jobs during the day, studied for her entrance exams at night, volunteered at the local hospital on weekends, and saved every penny she could. She never spoke about how tired she was, how difficult the material was, or how overwhelmed she felt. She processed all of these challenges privately, converting each obstacle into fuel for her determination. When Maria finally received her acceptance letter to medical school with a full scholarship, the people around her were shocked. They couldn't understand how someone with her background could achieve something so extraordinary. They attributed her success to luck, to connections they didn't know about, to advantages they couldn't see. They didn't realize that her greatest advantage was her decision to stop wasting energy on complaints and start investing it in solutions. But the story doesn't end there. During medical school, Maria faced even greater challenges. The coursework was brutal, the hours were exhausting, and the pressure was constant. Many of her classmates came from wealthy families and had advantages she could never dream of. The old Maria would have spent hours discussing how unfair this was, how much harder she had to work than everyone else, how the system favored the privileged instead. The new Maria used every challenge as training for the discipline she would need as a surgeon. When other students complained about the workload, she was studying. When others discussed their stress, she was practicing procedures. When others worried about their future, she was preparing for hers. Today, Dr. Maria Rodriguez is one of the most respected pediatric surgeons in her city. She saved hundreds of children's lives, trained dozens of medical students, and built a reputation for excellence that speaks louder than any complaint ever could. But here's the most powerful part of her story. She accomplished all of this while maintaining complete privacy about her struggles, even now. Very few people know about the obstacles she overcame to reach her position. Her colleagues see her as naturally gifted. Her patients' families see her as confidently capable. Her students see her as effortlessly excellent. She has built a legacy of strength that inspires others to believe in their own possibilities rather than being paralyzed by their problems. Maria's story teaches us the ultimate truth about private victory. Your greatest achievements will come not from the problems you discuss, but from the problems you solve in silence.